This is the closest humanity has ever been to midnight. On January 28, 2025, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists moved the Doomsday Clock to 89 seconds to midnight, the closest setting in its 78-year history. A symbolic clock might feel like empty theater, but the scientists behind it include Nobel laureates, former government officials, and leading researchers who meet twice a year to assess our collective risk of self-destruction. And here is what makes this genuinely alarming. Oxford philosopher Toby Ord ran the numbers on existential risk, calculating the probability that humanity faces extinction or permanent civilizational collapse this century, and he arrived at approximately 1 in 6. That works out to roughly 17%, the same odds as Russian roulette. What we are going to examine today are the 5 major threats driving that calculation: nuclear war, climate change, artificial intelligence, pandemics, and asteroid impacts. Some of these risks are accelerating. One of them turns out to be a success story. Understanding the difference might be the most important thing you learn this year. The clock itself frames everything else. So that is where we begin. June 1947 saw the Doomsday Clock appear for the first time on the cover of the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. Artist Martel Langsdorff, whose husband had worked on the Manhattan Project, placed it at 7 minutes to midnight because it looked good to her eye. The bulletin was founded in September 1945 by the very scientists who built the atomic bomb, including Albert Einstein and J. Robert Oppenheimer. Their stated purpose was to preserve civilization by scaring men into rationality. 26 adjustments have been made since 1947. The furthest point from midnight came in 1991 at 17 minutes, right after the Cold War ended. The closest point before now was 2 minutes, set in 1953 after both the United States and the Soviet Union tested hydrogen bombs. In their 2025 statement, the Science and Security Board warned that blindly continuing on the current path is a form of madness, and that the United States, China, and Russia have the collective power to destroy civilization. Harvard psychologist Steven Pinker has called the clock a propaganda stunt. Critics point to inconsistencies. For example, during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, the clock sat at 7 minutes, which was farther from midnight than in 2018. The bulletin's response is that critics should familiarize themselves with the painstaking and serious process behind each decision. Whether or not you take the clock literally, it points towards something real, a convergence of threats that deserves serious examination. The original existential threat deserves to go first. Approximately 12,241 nuclear warheads exist in the world right now, with about 3,912 deployed on missiles and aircraft, and roughly 2,100 sitting on high alert, which means ready to launch within minutes. Russia holds 5,459 total warheads, while the United States has 5,177, and together those two nations control 87% of the global arsenal. But here's what's changed. The arms control architecture that constrained nuclear competition for decades is falling apart. The INF Treaty, which eliminated an entire class of ground-launched missiles after 1987, was terminated by the United States in August 2019 over Russian violations. New START, the last major treaty limiting American and Russian arsenals, expires on February 5, 2026, with no successor agreement anywhere in sight. Russia suspended its participation in February 2023, and that decision halted the data exchanges and on-site inspections that had provided transparency for 3 decades. China's stockpile is growing fastest of all. adding approximately 100 new warheads annually, and Pentagon projections put them at over 1,000 operational warheads by 2030, up from around 600 today. What actual nuclear war would look like is almost unthinkable. A 2022 study in Nature Food modeled 6 nuclear war scenarios, and an exchange between India and Pakistan using 100 weapons would loft about 5 million tons of soot into the atmosphere, potentially killing more than 2 billion people through resulting famine. A full-scale exchange between the United States and Russia would mean roughly 150 million tons of soot, a 90% drop in global calorie production, and over 5 billion deaths from famine alone, before anyone counts direct casualties. Alan Robach of Rutgers, a leading nuclear winter researcher, put it this way: "The data tell us one thing: we must prevent a nuclear war from ever happening." 1 in 1,000. That's Toby Ord's estimate for nuclear war's existential risk this century. The number might sound low, but remember that even a non-extinction level nuclear war could kill billions of people. A slower-moving catastrophe comes next. The warmest year ever recorded was 2024, coming in between 1.46 and 1.62 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, depending on which dataset you use. It became the first calendar year to exceed the Paris Agreement's 1.5 degrees threshold. July 22, 2024 stands as the single hottest day ever measured globally. Atmospheric carbon dioxide has now reached 430.5 parts per million, which is 50% higher than pre-industrial levels, and rising faster than at any point in millions of years. A landmark 2022 study in the journal Science identified 16 climate tipping points. These are thresholds beyond which changes become self-reinforcing and irreversible. The alarming finding was that current warming already lies within the lower end of the uncertainty ranges for 5 tipping points. 6 tipping points are likely within the Paris Agreement range of 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius. Greenland ice sheet collapse, West Antarctic ice sheet collapse, low-latitude coral reef die-off, abrupt permafrost, thaw, Labrador Sea convection collapse, Barents Sea ice loss. 2.5 times as much carbon as is in the current atmosphere is locked in Arctic permafrost. And the 2024 NOAA Arctic Report Card reports that the Arctic tundra has already shifted from carbon sink to carbon source. That is a feedback loop not fully accounted for in global climate models, which means projections may be underestimating warming. The extreme weather signal has become unmistakable. A 2025 analysis by World Weather Attribution found that 17 of 22 extreme weather events were made more severe by climate change. In the past year alone, climate change added 41 additional days of dangerous heat globally, affecting 4 billion people. Toby Ord assigns climate change a 1 in 1,000 existential risk probability, not because impacts will not be catastrophic, but because climate change on its own is unlikely to cause human extinction even in severe scenarios. What it would do is reshape civilization as we know it. And this is where the probabilities get genuinely alarming. Geoffrey Hinton, Yoshua Bengio, and Yann LeCun share the 2018 Turing Award for their foundational work in AI, earning them the title of the 3 godfathers of deep learning. 2 of them now express serious concern about existential risk from their own field. Hinton left Google in May 2023 specifically to speak freely about AI dangers, and his probability estimate runs between 10 and 20% that AI systems will take over. He explained the idea with a striking analogy. We are like somebody who has this really cute tiger cub. Unless you can be very sure that it is not going to want to kill you when it is grown up, you should worry. Bengio chairs the International AI Safety Report, and his warning is stark. If you look further down the road, when we reach the level of superintelligence, there are two major risks. The first is the loss of human control. If superintelligent machines have a self-preservation objective, their goal could be to destroy humanity so we could not turn them off. A 2023 survey of 2,788 AI researchers produced a median estimate of 5% probability and a mean of 14.4% that AI could cause human extinction or similarly permanent disempowerment. 58% of those surveyed believed there is at least a 5% chance of catastrophic outcomes. May 2023 brought a one-sentence statement from the Center for AI Safety. It said that mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority, alongside other societal-scale risks, such as pandemics and nuclear war. The people who signed it included Chief Executive Officers Sam Altman of OpenAI, Dario Amodei of Anthropic, and Demis Hassabis of DeepMind. 1 in 10. That is Toby Ord's probability estimate for unaligned AI, which works out to 10% and comes in higher than all other sources of existential risk combined. The EUAI Act entered into force in August 2024, establishing the world's first comprehensive AI regulatory framework. But the U.S. Executive Order on AI Safety from October 2023 was revoked in January 2025. International coordination remains fragmented. COVID-19 was supposed to be our wake-up call. The World Health Organization calculated excess mortality and put the death toll at approximately 14.83 million people in 2020 and 2021 alone, which was 2.74 times higher than the 5.42 million officially reported deaths for that period. Economic costs ranged from $8.5 trillion, according to the United Nations, up to as high as $35 trillion over 5 years, and the pandemic pushed 95 million additional people into extreme poverty. The Independent Panel for Pandemic Preparedness reached a damning conclusion that the world was not prepared and had ignored warnings, which resulted in a massive failure. And have we learned from it? The World Health Organization Pandemic Agreement was adopted on May 20th, 2025, more than 3 years after negotiations began, and critical provisions remain under negotiation. Biosecurity risks are growing at the same time. A systematic review documented 309 laboratory-acquired infections from 2000 to 2021, including 8 fatalities and 16 pathogen escape incidents. Researchers called this the tip of the iceberg due to underreporting. Toby Ord draws a sharp distinction between natural and engineered pandemic risk. Natural pandemics have a 1 in 10,000 probability. Engineered pandemics, potentially created with advancing biotechnology, have a 1 in 30 probability, roughly 3.3%. Context helps here. The 1918 Spanish flu infected 1/3 of humanity and killed 50 to 100 million people. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has warned that a pandemic virus equivalent in pathogenicity to the 1918 virus would likely kill over 100 million people worldwide today, even with modern medicine. Now for something different, which is a risk we are actually managing. September 26, 2022, marked the day NASA's DART mission successfully altered an asteroid's orbit for the first time in human history, changing Dimorphos's orbital period by 32 minutes and 42 seconds. and exceeding the success threshold by more than 25 times. As of late 2024, we have cataloged 37,378 near-Earth objects, including 2,465 potentially hazardous asteroids. The catch is that we have only discovered approximately 43 to 44% of asteroids larger than 140 meters, the size capable of devastating a city or region. The Near-Earth Object Surveyor Space Telescope launches in September 2027, and it should achieve 90% detection of these objects within 10 to 12 years of operation, 1 in 1 million per century. That is Toby Ord's rating for asteroid existential risk, among the lowest of all threats. He calls planetary defense a success in existential risk management, citing bipartisan congressional support and sustained funding. What this proves matters beyond asteroids themselves. These risks are tractable. We went from zero deflection capability to successfully moving an asteroid within decades. And if we can do that for space rocks, we can do it for the threats we have created ourselves. So where does all of this leave us? Toby Ord's comprehensive assessment estimates total existential risk this century at approximately 1 in 6. Nick Bostrom, founder of Oxford's Future of Humanity Institute, argued that setting the probability lower than 25% would be misguided. Less than 0.001% of gross world product currently goes toward targeted existential risk reduction. The Doomsday Clock's 89 seconds to midnight is not a prediction of doom, and neither is Ord's 1 in 6 probability. They are measurements of our collective choice, assessments of risk that can change based on our actions. The data supports neither complacency nor despair. We face genuine existential threats, several measured in percentage points per century rather than negligible fractions. AI and engineered pandemics represent the highest probability risks, while nuclear war and climate change, though less likely to cause extinction, could still kill billions. But the asteroid example shows these risks can be managed with sustained attention and resources. We have done it before. Toby Ord's words are worth ending on. He wrote that humanity stands at a precipice. Our species could survive for millions of generations, enough time to end disease, poverty, and injustice, to reach new heights of flourishing. But this vast future is at risk. 89 seconds is not much time, but it is enough if we choose to use it.